Did you walk into a trap, though? I mean, they bring him to your hotel. He's in the civilian clothes, and you met with him. We saw the images. You put out the picture of meeting with him. The beginning of the meeting. You're sitting there. You're drinking water and talking to the guy in the hotel lobby, I assume. And then at some point they bring in these glasses that look like margarita glasses.
No, it wasn't a trap. My goal was to meet with him.
Yeah.
And make sure I could tell his wife and family he was okay. That was my goal, and I achieved that goal. You're absolutely right that the Salvadorian authorities tried to deceive people. They tried to make it look like he was in paradise. They actually wanted to have the meeting by the hotel pool originally.
Really?
Absolutely. Absolutely. We had to negotiate that. They wanted to put me right overlooking the pool. In fact, if you had a different angle on the camera shot, you would see the pool. Because
they did right. Bukele put out a statement saying, miraculously risen from the death camps and torture and sipping margaritas with you. Yeah. I mean, they were really trying to make you look like you were hanging out with somebody that they say is a gang member.
Look, this is a person who the United States courts have determined was illegally taken from the United States. And my whole purpose here is to make sure that we observe the rule of law, the Constitution, and due process rights. Bukele, yes, he tried to make it look like somehow Abrego Garcia was enjoying himself. All of that was a setup, right? He had the waiters there. People ordered the waiters to bring these things that look like margaritas. Yeah. It just goes to show the lengths that Bukele and Trump will go to try to deceive people about what this case is all about. What this case is all about is simply complying with the Supreme Court order to facilitate his return and make sure he gets due process.
All right, guys, so happy Resurrection Day to each and every one of you. I hope that you're spending time with your friends, your family, your community, your church, remembering the death and resurrection of our Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ, because God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten Son so that whoever believes in him shall not perish, but have everlasting life. So with that being said, I want to go ahead and play a special message from the White House, and then we're going to get into this video.
Easter Sunday, we celebrate his glorious resurrection and proclaim, as Christians have done for nearly 2,000 years, he is risen. Through the pain and sacrifice of Jesus on the cross, we saw God's boundless love and devotion to all humanity. And in that moment of his resurrection, history was forever changed with the promise of everlasting life. As we approach this joyous Easter Sunday, I want to wish Christians everywhere a happy and beautiful and blessed holiday. America is a nation of believers. We need God. We want God. And with his help, we will make our nation stronger, safer, greater, and more prosperous, and much more united than ever before. Thank you to everyone, and have a really happy Easter.
All right, guys, so we got to talk about the Democrat Party, a party that seems to be determined to destroy itself, okay, because they have decided that they are going to take the most far left positions possible on one of the main issues that lost them the 2024 election, which is illegal immigration, okay? The Democrats decided to let in 10 to 20 million illegals into this country, okay? And now the Trump administration is having to do whatever they can, right, to deport as many illegals as possible to fix the problem. The issue is that everybody, including the courts, are against President Trump for whatever reason, okay? Maybe, again, because these are liberal activist judges, and the Democrats really, really, really want illegals to stay in this country, okay? And they are so hell-bent on bringing illegals into the country that they have decided it would be a good idea politically for them to go to El Salvador to rescue an illegal immigrant alleged gang-banging, wife-beating, human trafficker, right? Abrego Garcia, okay? That is who Democrats are standing up for. I mean, this is who they like to hang out with, to have margaritas with in El Salvador, right? Democrat Senator Chris Van Hollen. That's exactly what he did. But, you know, to me, I'm just saying that if Democrats really wanted to hang around alleged wife beaters, then they could have just went to Doug Emhoff's house, right? There were easier ways to surround yourself with those type of people than flying all the way to El Salvador. But here we are. Democrats are clearly not understanding the fact that this is not good optics for them, right? Because they're doubling and tripling down that this is the hill that they should die on, okay? Bringing illegal immigrants back into the United States of America, people who are not citizens of this country. But then again, it appears as if Chris Van Hollen believes that Obrego Garcia is not just an illegal immigrant, right? No, he believes that Obrego Garcia is an American.
I think at some point, the president of El Salvador realized it was looking really bad to have this person who had been absconded from America, from the streets of Maryland, in one of their prisons.
I mean, there you have it, folks. There you have it. Senator Van Hollen believes that Obrego Garcia is an American, right? That is what he believes. Whoever thought it was a good idea for this dude to go on national TV, okay, because he went on a circuit on all of these Sunday shows talking about this issue, right? Standing 10 toes down for an illegal immigrant that he believes is an American, which is probably how he justifies using taxpayer dollars to fly to El Salvador to bring somebody back to this country who's not an American, that is not a citizen of this country.
A senator from Maryland who didn't even acknowledge or barely acknowledged my daughter and the brutal death that she endured, leaving her 5 children without a mother and now a grandbaby without a grandmother, so that he can use my taxpayer money to fly to El Salvador to bring back someone that's not even an American citizen.
So a lot of questions there. First of all, who did pay for this trip?
This was an officially cleared, congressional trip, cleared on a bipartisan basis. Yes, like every other trip like the trip Kristi Noem took with her fashion show before CONFRONT, like the trip that 5 Republican members of the House took, like the day before when they went into CONFRONT. I can tell you, so yes, it was an official trip.
Okay.
Yeah, so Republicans went on the trip to deport illegals out of the country, right? To make the country safer, okay? Which would justify using tax dollars to go over there to, again, make the United States of America safer. We're working in partnership for the benefit of the country, for the benefit of Americans, okay? You use taxpayer money to go over there to do literally the exact opposite, right? To bring illegals into our country, which does not benefit our country, okay? I'm not sure if Chris Van Hollen understands that, again, there is a difference, okay? But regardless, what people are saying is that, yes, you have your priorities completely and totally out of line because you don't seem to care about the American people who are victims of violence by illegal immigrants more than you care about trying to protect the quote-unquote rights of the illegal immigrants. And Chris Van Hollen said it himself. He doesn't know what crime, illegal immigrant crime, has to do with Obrego Garcia, right? He doesn't really see the connection here.
What is your response to Mrs. Morin?
My heart goes out to the Morin family. They experienced an unspeakable tragedy in the murder of their daughter. And I said at the time that my heart goes out to the Morin family. And I'm very glad that the killer of Rachel has been convicted in a court of law. That is how we hold guilty people accountable. The courts of law are also where people get to have their due process, so we don't unfairly punish people who don't have criminal records. And so my view is you can crack down and hold guilty people accountable and also respect the due process rights of everybody who is in court. And I'm not sure why Obrego Garcia's rights should be denied based on an awful murder that he had absolutely nothing to do with.
Yeah, so there you have it. That is the Democrats telling you straight up, hey, we don't know what the connection is between illegal immigrants committing crimes and Abrego Garcia, right? Because, hey, according to them, Abrego Garcia is an angel, okay? He's not an alleged wife beater, human trafficker, gangbanger, okay? But, Democrats, this is what they're pushing, right? This is the hill they're choosing to die on. So with that being said, I want to react to this interview on CNN. And I got to say, Dana Bash actually is going to do a half decent job of pressing this senator with a lot of good questions. And this is, again, a very, very, very interesting interview here on CNN. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get into this.
Now, President Trump says that some of Abrego Garcia's tattoos signify that he's a member of MS-13. In 2019, police alleged a confidential informant claimed that Abrego Garcia was an active MS-13 member. His wife and his attorney deny that, of course. Can you say with absolute certainty that he is not, nor has he ever been a member of the MS-13 gang? And did you ask him point blank?
Well, Dana, what Donald Trump is trying to do here is change the subject.
No, you're trying to change the subject, right? That's what you're trying to do. She asked you a question about whether or not you asked the illegal immigrant if he's a part of a gang, right? But again, this dude doesn't care, right? He doesn't care if he's a gang member. He just wants to bring him back, right? He wants to bring him back. Doesn't care who he is. Doesn't care if he's potentially violent, dangerous, committed crimes, right? He doesn't care about that. All he wants is to bring him back, okay? And this is why it is not a good idea for Democrats to be defending this, but they seem to be too stupid to realize it. It's fascinating. It really is. This should be studied in political science, to be honest with you.
The subject at hand is that he and his administration are defying a court order to give Abrego Garcia his due process rights. They are trying to litigate on social media what they should be doing in the courts. They need to put up or shut up in the courts. Let me tell you, and I decided to write this down so I could be absolutely accurate as to what Federal District Court Judge Zinnes said about these allegations by the Trump administration. Quote, "No evidence linking Abrego Garcia to MS-13 or any terrorist activity has been presented to the court." That's where to litigate this. It's been litigated in many other places. So I'm not going to get into the details because the whole purpose of our court system is for them to adjudicate these things, not for Donald Trump to go off on social media.
Yeah, you're right. They have not, there hasn't been a court hearing for them to put forward evidence in the first place, which is your whole point.
Exactly. There hasn't been a hearing for them to be able to do what this dude is asking them to do. So why is it that you keep bringing it up? Well, they haven't presented any evidence. Well, they haven't had a chance to, right? Let the process play out. The process is currently playing out. They're presenting the evidence right down to the public, letting the public know, look at this guy, right? Look at these tattoos on his fingers, right? Clearly a gang member, okay? But see, again, according to Democrat logic and liberal media logic, Pete Hegseth, his Christian tattoos, that's evidence of proof. He's a white nationalist, right? But when it comes to Abrego Garcia, the illegal immigrant, tattoos, MS-13 gang tattoos, that's not proof that he's a gang member, right? Where's the evidence? You don't have any evidence or proof. Again, it's just funny how that works.
But since you were the one person to have met with him, and since this is a thing, you say on social media, it's what we hear from Donald Trump and Republicans every day, all day long, you didn't ask him?
I didn't ask him that because I know what his answer is. What he told me was he was sad and traumatized that he was being in prison because he has committed no crimes. And that goes to the heart of this issue because he's being denied his due process rights. And Donald Trump is trying to change the subject. When people start asking that question, in my view, they're falling into the president's trap because what the president wants to do is talk about that as if we can't all fight gang violence, which I've been doing for much longer than Donald Trump, right? His argument is you can't fight that and at the same time uphold people's constitutional rights. That's a very dangerous view.
Yeah, well, I think a lot of people would take issue with the statement that an illegal immigrant has constitutional rights, right? Because they're not American citizens, okay? So how does he have constitutional rights? I don't understand it. I don't get it, okay? But this is what they claim, that illegal immigrants have constitutional rights, okay? And that we shouldn't be concerned about whether or not he's a gang member, right? This is just not good optics for the Democrats. Who told them this is a good idea, right? To go on national television and to say these things. Well, it doesn't matter if he's a gang member, right? We shouldn't be concerned about that. I think we should be, right? I think that we should be. I don't think that a vast majority of the American people want us to be bringing back gang members into this country. I just don't think that's what the American people want.
If we deny the constitutional rights of this one man, it threatens the constitutional rights of everybody in America.
So on that note, you have said your goal is to bring Abrego Garcia home. Home is the word that you used. But he did enter the United States illegally. So if he were to come back to the U.S., went through the proper legal process, got a deportation notice through due process, would you be okay with that?
I'm for whatever gives him his due process rights. And it was his due process rights where an immigration judge back in 2019 said he should not be deported to El Salvador because that would actually put his life in risk from gang members like MS-13 or others. And the Trump administration did not appeal that immigration judge order to keep him in the United States. Because he's here legally now, he has a work permit, he's a sheet metal worker, he has a family, he has 3 kids. And so the reality is I am fine so with whatever result happens, so long as he is given his due process rights under the Constitution. And that is why we have a 9-0 opinion from the Supreme Court.
So
That's why we had a strong opinion from the Fourth Circuit.
You would be okay if he were, at the end of this, ultimately deported?
I'm okay with whatever the rule of law dictates. But right now, we have a lawless president. We have a lawless president. No, let's be clear. We have a lawless president who is ignoring the order of the Supreme Court of the United States to facilitate his return. That's what's going on right now.
This is hilarious. This is hilarious. See, you notice how the liberal media, they've changed their tune? This is how you know Democrats are losing on this issue. Because she could have softballed this interview. These are not softball questions, right? Because basically what she's alluding to is this idea that, well, you can do all this fighting, but he's going to be deported because he came into the country illegally. Like, they're going to just deport him again. Is it really worth dying on this hill? Right? That is essentially the message that the liberal media is sending, right? That is the question they're starting to ask. They're starting to say our propaganda isn't really working. Maybe we should start to really ask Democrats some real questions about the strategy here, right? Like, is this really worth pursuing? Because we're looking silly, right? We're looking real silly. He's here illegally. If he comes back, he's going to be deported again, and you're not going to be able to contest that deportation, right? You're not going to be able to boohoo, whine, and cry about him being deported to Egypt, right? Or, I don't know, Sudan, okay? Or some other very fortunate country for somebody like him to be deported to, right? It's not going to be a good look. So you might want to just cut your losses, right? Just cut your losses. But because Democrats are so Trump deranged, they don't have the ability to critically think at this point, right? They're cognitively impaired. So they don't understand that there is no end game in which this guy is going to be permanently living in the United States of America. All of this, everything that they're doing right now is for nothing, literally for nothing.
That is a risk to all of us. And so all of this other stuff, you can ask about it, but they need to put up or shut up in the courts of the United States.
Can I ask you about the facilitate language that the Supreme Court used? Because the legal argument that the White House, the Trump administration is using is that the Supreme Court didn't say effectuate, and that is a distinction with a difference, and that because it was 9-0, perhaps the Supreme Court used the word facilitate on purpose, and that is the kind of loophole that the administration got from the Supreme Court. What's your response to that?
Facilitate does not mean you do nothing. And that is what Judge Zinnes said when the case was returned to her. She wants to take depositions from the administration to find out what they're doing to facilitate his return. That's why the fourth...
Yeah, facilitate means help, right? That's what it means. It doesn't mean anything more than that, right? The administration can literally facilitate by essentially saying, okay, well, we will potentially offer transportation if the El Salvador president says that Abrego can come back, right? Because again, he is a citizen of El Salvador. He is not a citizen of the United States of America, despite what this Democrat thinks. He is not a citizen of the United States of America. We don't have any jurisdiction over him. We don't. El Salvador has jurisdiction over him. And if the president of El Salvador says, no, we're not releasing him, then it doesn't matter, right? It doesn't matter. So again, what facilitate actually really means, it doesn't mean that we must declare war against El Salvador to get this guy back. It doesn't mean that we must punish El Salvador in order to get him back. It doesn't mean that at all. It just simply means that we have to show that, okay, we can help bring him back, but it doesn't mean that we actually have to bring him back. We don't have to force El Salvador to give him back. We don't have to do that.
Fourth Circuit just a few days ago had very strong language, again, underscoring the fact that the administration is violating Abrego Garcia's constitutional rights. So the administration needs to show it's trying. I asked the folks at the embassy in San Salvador, the American embassy, whether they'd gotten any direction from the Trump administration to help facilitate his release. The answer was no. They are outright defying a court order of the United States. And Donald Trump wants to change the subject to all these other things.
And I just want to ask you one last question, just frankly about some raw politics of this. And I'm asking you this because we've heard some of your fellow Democrats like Gavin Newsom say that it's a mistake to have this fight when the economy really is the issue that Democrats should be focused on. He said it's the distraction of the day, the art of distraction. And how is it so that we are looking like we're defending, someone who's out of sight, out of mind in El Salvador? Do you see an argument that the focus on this, regardless of due process, which is totally understandable, but just on the politics, might not be winning for you?
I don't think it's ever wrong to fight for the constitutional rights of one person, because if we give up on one person's right.
An illegal immigrant, right? Let's be specific here. An illegal immigrant. It sounds a lot different if you say, I don't think it's wrong to fight for the rights of an illegal immigrant, right? If you actually frame it accurately, right? If you say what he is saying accurately, okay, then yeah, it don't sound good, okay? It really don't.
We threaten everybody's rights. And I think a lot of voters, both Republican and Democrat, are tired of elected officials and politicians who just put their finger to the wind. And I would say that anyone who's not prepared to stand up and fight for the Constitution doesn't deserve to lead.
Senator Chris Van Hollen, thank you so much for being here, and happy Easter, sir.
Thank you.
Yeah, this guy, he is single-handedly destroying whatever's left of the Democrat Party, right? Again, the Democrats are already in shambles, and this dude is making it worse and worse and worse. He decided to go on a circuit of humiliation, basically showing to the world that this is the priority of the Democrat Party, right? Saving illegal immigrants. Again, not something that I would advise the Democrats to do, but they've chosen their fate. We'll see how this works out, right? How Democrats can explain to their constituents why this is such an important issue for them. But let me know what you guys think. Make sure you like, comment, and subscribe. Most importantly, share a Black conservative perspective. Peace.